Today I'll be discussing the lab diagnosis of Neisseria meningitidis, which I told you are gram-negative diplococci, oxidase and catalase positive, and 13 serotypes have been identified so far. For diagnosis of this pathogen, the samples which we receive in the lab are number one CSF because it causes meningitis. We get blood in the lab because it is also responsible for meningococcemia. Nasopharyngeal swabs are collected especially for detection of carriers, and I told you that 5 to 10% of the entire population are carrier of this organism. Now, if you look at the slide, the CSF is collected by lumbar puncture. You're going to introduce the needle between L3 and L4, collect the sample in the syringe, and it is immediately sent to the laboratory. In case of delay, you are going to put the sample in a transport media and then deliver it to the laboratory. So, day one is the day where you're going to get the specimen in the laboratory. Blood and CSF are basically used for smear and culture. Nasopharyngeal swabs are used for detection of the carrier stage. The culture media utilized are number one blood agar, number two we use chocolate agar, and then we use a selective medium which is known as modified Thayer and Martin media. This medium is basically used for samples which are collected from sites contaminated with commensals, like the nasopharynx, where the commensals are also there together with Neisseria meningitidis, and in case of Neisseria gonorrhoeae, when we take the samples from vagina or the cervix, we are going to inoculate the sample on modified Thayer and Martin media. Now, these antibiotics are going to inhibit the growth of normal flora and will enhance the growth of Neisseria meningitidis. After inoculation, you're going to incubate the plates at 35 degrees centigrade in 5 to 10% carbon dioxide, because this is again a capnophilic organism which requires carbon dioxide for its growth. Now, once we get the sample in the lab and you have inoculated it on the different plates, next you're going to do the direct microscopy. Direct microscopic examination of all samples are done in the lab on day one, and as you can see on this slide, you will see gram-negative diplococci with their flattened ends adjacent to one another, and they are mostly intracellular. You can see this gram-negative diplococci within the neutrophils. However, some of these can also be seen as extracellular pathogen. Alright, so this is direct examination or direct microscopy. Next, the most important test is CSF examination. This CSF examination is done whenever we get this sample in the laboratory, irrespective of whether it is Neisseria meningitidis or strep pneumoniae or Haemophilus influenza. So the presumptive diagnosis is based on CSF examination, and it is very important for the clinician to know whether it is bacterial infection or viral infection. So we are going to perform this test within half an hour of receiving the sample, and it has to be reported within 2 hours. If you look at the naked eye appearance of CSF, you're going to see turbid CSF, or it's going to be cloudy or purulent. Microscopically, the total leukocyte count is markedly raised, and on DLC you see mainly neutrophils. Gram staining is going to show you gram-negative diplococci with their this flattened edge adjacent to one another. Then you're going to perform chemistry on the CSF. The glucose level is markedly decreased because as they multiply, they are going to use the glucose present in the CSF, whereas the protein levels are increased. So all this indicates that it is bacterial infection, not viral infection, and you're going to inform this to the clinician. This slide is showing you again gram staining, and on gram staining you see these intracellular gram-negative diplococci, plus you can see the extracellular gram-negative diplococci. And this slide is very important. This is what we see for Neisseria meningitidis, and we have to inform the clinician about it. Day 2 is when you look at the colonial morphology. Colonial interpretation from culture plates is done. The important thing is that on blood agar you're going to see non-hemolytic colonies. This organism is a non-hemolytic bacteria. The colonies are unpigmented and they are shiny grayish in color. On chocolate agar and modified Thayer and Martin media, you're again going to see raised colorless colonies. And as I said, this Thayer and Martin medium is a selective media for Neisseria. This slide is showing you interpretation of colonies on blood agar, and you can see these unpigmented non-hemolytic colonies. Now, if you put a drop of oxygen reagent on these colonies, after some period, within a few minutes, they are going to turn purple, indicating that this organism is an oxidase positive organism. Chocolate agar is heated blood agar, and this is basically used for isolation of fastidious organisms like Neisseria meningitidis, Strep pneumoniae, and Haemophilus influenza. Now, what you need to remember here is that these three organisms are responsible for meningitis, and all these three organisms are also capnophilic, which means that they require 5 to 10% carbon dioxide for their growth, and thirdly, they require chocolate agar for inoculation. So you're going to get MCQ on this part, and you have to remember the importance of chocolate agar. The colonies you can see are raised and they are colorless, and this organism is, as I said, it is not going to produce hemolysis, and we can easily identify this organism by again putting a drop of oxidase reagent on this the plate, and the colonies will turn purple. Another slide showing you both Neisseria, the blood and chocolate agar, and you can see the non-hemolytic colonies on blood agar. Chocolate agar is brown in color, blood is red in color. Coming to modified Thayer and Martin media. Now, as I said before, this is chocolate agar to which antibiotics have been added. We have added vancomycin, colistin, nystatin, trimethoprim to this plate, to this agar, as a result of which it becomes highly selective for Neisseria gonorrhoeae and meningitidis. It is going to inhibit the normal commensals which are present in the rectum and the cervix or the vagina in case of Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and in case of meningitidis, when we take the sample for detection of carrier like the nasopharyngeal swabs, then the commensals of nasopharynx are inhibited, and it will only allow Neisseria meningitidis to grow. So on day 2, we are also going to perform bench test. As I said, it is oxidase and catalase positive, and at the same time, it is going to produce rapid carbohydrate fermentation. Both glucose and maltose are fermented with acid formation. And because it is a capsulated organism, it is also going to give quelling reaction. This is rapid carbohydrate fermentation test, and you can see that meningitidis is fermenting both glucose and maltose, whereas gonorrhoeae is only fermenting glucose. Now, this is one of your very important MCQ and OSPE question. You have to differentiate between meningitidis and gonorrhoeae on the basis of rapid carbohydrate fermentation test. Glucose, you know, is a basic sugar, whereas maltose is a disaccharide where it is made up of two molecules of glucose which are connected to each other by one 4-glycoside bond. So because the simplest sugar is glucose, gonorrhoeae is going to utilize or ferment glucose, and the best way to remember this is by the letter M and G. G is for gonorrhea, and this is going to ferment only glucose, which is also G, whereas meningitidis is going to ferment the basic sugar, which is glucose, and M for maltose. So this is how you're going to remember this. Meningitidis fermenting glucose and maltose, and Neisseria gonorrhoeae only fermenting glucose. Then we come to the oxidase test. Oxidase test, we have done this while we were doing other pathogens. However, you're going to just put a drop of oxidase reagent on filter paper. Pick up well isolated colonies from the culture plates and smudge them on this oxidase reagent. If it gets purple in color due to formation of indophenol blue, the test is believed to be positive. If there is no purple color, then the test is negative. Neisseria meningitidis and Ganori, they are both oxidase positive. Similarly, a catalase test, Neisseria species are catalase positive, and you're going to put a drop of hydrogen peroxide on the slide and pick up well isolated colonies of Neisseria from the plate, inoculated plate, mix it with the hydrogen peroxide, and the bubbles start coming out, indicating again a positive catalase test. Quelling reaction we have done with the strep pneumoniae, and from on this slide you can see this is before the addition of antisera. You can identify, you can see the unstained capsule, and you can see these diplococci. But when you add a drop of antisera to it, the capsular antibodies present in the antiserum are going to get attached to the capsule antigen. There is going to be formation of antigen antibody complex, which changes the refractive index, and the capsule appears swollen. So here you can see the swollen capsule. On the other hand, in this on this side, because the antisera is not added, so the capsule is there but it is not swollen. This is also showing you the swelling of the capsule, and you can identify the diplococci, gram-negative diplococci, surrounded by a big capsule. Quelling reaction can be better visualized if you add a drop of some reagent stain to it. Like here we have added methylene blue, and with methylene blue you can see that the organism has taken up the blue color and the capsule is unstained, and you can easily visualize the swollen capsule around the blue organisms. So this is quelling reaction or capsular swelling reaction, which is specially seen with strep pneumoniae, and then it is also seen with Klebsiella pneumoniae, which is again a capsulated organism, and the third organism which is going to show you capsular swelling is Neisseria meningitidis. Capsular swelling is not seen with Neisseria gonorrhoeae because the capsule is very little and it's not really very prominent. Then we come to the serological tests. The serological tests are for capsule detection, and we have done quelling reaction. You can also perform lattice agglutination test, or you can do a direct fluorescent antibody technique. The organisms can also be detected. These diplococci can be detected by using fluorescent dyes, and with fluorescent dyes you're going to use immunofluorescent techniques where these diplococci appear green. They start fluorescing green because of attachment of the dye. Then we perform serotyping. Because there are various serotypes responsible for meningitis, you're going to use first polyvalent sera to see whether the capsular antigen is there or not, and then you're going to use monovalent antisera to see which serotype is responsible for meningitis. Coming to sensitivity and prevention, chemoprophylaxis is very important for carriers and all those individuals who have come in contact with patients with meningococcal meningitis. Immunoprophylaxis is done with vaccine ANC or with combined vaccine, which is ACY, W and 135. As I told you in my previous lecture, no vaccine is available against serotype B, which is now believed to be responsible for majority of meningococcal meningitis cases. This slide is showing you a summary of lab diagnosis. So you're going to get the sample, which could be CSF or blood, in the laboratory. You do a direct smear and you see gram-negative diplococci, which are seen within these polymorphs or neutrophils, and the specimen is then inoculated on selective and non-selective media like blood agar or chocolate agar, and on modified Thierry Martin media. You're going to put the plates, inoculated plates, in the incubator for 35 to 30 for 24 to 48 hours, and it's a capnophilic organism, so you're going to provide carbon dioxide to it. Once you get the colonies, the next day you're going to do a gram staining from the colonies, and if you see typical gram negative diplococci, then you're going to report it as positive, or presumptive tests would be performed, which are oxidase test and catalase test. If these are also positive, then you're going to perform the biochemical test, which we have already discussed, especially the sugar fermentation test, and you perform a serological test, or you can also do PCR or polymerase chain reaction for detection of nucleic acid. If it is positive, then you are going to report it or confirm the diagnosis, and you're going to report it as positive. Or on the other hand, if on microscopy no typical gram negative diplococci were seen, then the report is as negative. So there's going to be a presumptive diagnosis and confirmative diagnosis, as I've discussed in this lecture. This slide is very important. Mostly you get a question on the lab diagnosis of this pathogen, and if you just write it down in this manner, you will get full marks. Coming to your assignment, you have to attempt all the MCQs before marking your attendance, and you're going to email or WhatsApp the SCQ, but handwritten answers are required within 2 days of this lecture. Now, the case scenario is a child presenting with signs and symptoms of meningitis. The CSF and the blood which is sent to the laboratory are showing you gram-negative diplococci. What is the most likely pathogen? Name the most important virulent factors involved in production of this. All the virulence factors, there are 3 important virulent factors which you have to write about, and then you need to discuss the morphology, pathogenesis, and lab diagnosis of this pathogen. The MCQs, number 1 is to differentiate between Neisseria meningitidis and Neisseria gonorrhoeae, which test is mostly done. Then again, a woman presenting with septic arthritis. The fluid aspirates shows you gram-negative diplococci on chocolate agar. They are oxidase positive, and they are just fermenting glucose, not maltose, lactose, or sucrose. So you suspect infection with which of the following organisms? Third is a male presenting with signs and symptoms of meningitis. Spinal fluid reveals increased number of neutrophils, proteins, and decreased glucose. However, the culture on blood agar shows oxidase positive non-hemolytic Drache colonies. The most likely pathogen is which of the following? So this is all about Neisseria meningitidis. Next, I'm moving on to Neisseria gonorrhoeae, which is a sexually transmitted infection. So thank you.